Good morning. So artificial intelligence is a buzzword, and we wanted with Sylvain to take a concrete use case of artificial intelligence and check if this use case can fit with OpenStack. So first, a quick introduction. So I'm Erwan Galen. I'm product manager at Red Hat. I'm working on compute on the HPC cloud platforms. I'm also president of OpenStack French user group. Sylvain?
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Sylvain Boza. I'm working at Red Hat as a senior software engineer. I'm also working upstream on Nova. In particular, I'm a Nova core. In case you don't know, but you probably guessed, I'm French. In case you also guessed, I'm also a skiing lover. And so I will be discussing about technical details about virtual GPUs and GPU pass-through as well.
All right, so quick agenda. So we will first, so it's more a presentation. We are not data scientists, so we'll not go deep in all neural network, but it's very important to describe what is face recognition. We'll describe also the concept of deep face recognition, which machine learning algorithm to use, and is it good to use hardware accelerators for face recognition, why OpenStack is the premier choice for this type of use cases, and we'll take a concrete example with TensorFlow on GPUs. So what is face recognition? So we'll start to say perhaps that by what is not face recognition. So it's me when I was at school. So taking this class photo, you don't know who are the people, and face recognition is not face detection. So face detection is the localization of faces in a picture. So face detection is a subset of face recognition. So it's drawing boxes around faces. So for this, there is plenty of framework libraries on internet. So one of the most simple library, it's called face recognition. It's in Python, and if you run this example script for this class photo example, you can isolate all the faces. So it's like a pre-processing of a face recognition. It's identifying the faces on pictures. What is not, again, face recognition? It's not also face classification. So face classification is grouping images, identifying some criteria, like, for example, age or emotion. So for ages, I have used a quite old algorithm. It's not perfect. So I'm here, for me, perhaps 7 years old was good, but for other friends, it was not so good. So this guy, 66, I'm not sure it's so accurate. So I will have to try perhaps more recent machine learning algorithm, but so it's not perfect. But it's still good. What is not face recognition? It's not also face manipulation. We are seeing this everywhere. Every mobile phone, every social media has face manipulation. And now face manipulation is using also AI, because this is just a bitmap mapping, putting images on faces, but now also we can generate faces with face manipulation. From a data set of faces, we can create other faces. So, and it's also boring for machines to add Christmas hat on Snapchat peak filter. So I like machines, so I prefer not to do this type of jobs on OpenStack. So what is face recognition? So it's a computer science technology that allows to identify person, faces on images or video frames. So it will extract feature from an input face image. And the idea is to mimic what humans are doing. So if I'm looking this room, I know some of the guys, and at the bottom of the room, I can identify guys because I know them, I have seen them in multiple positions. This guy, for example.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So I can see, yeah, it's Sylvain. So yeah, in fact, why can I identify it's Sylvain? Because I'm used to see this guy, the size of his nose, is R. So it's a list of criteria I can identify. And computer will do the same thing, trying to grab all these criteria and trying to identify who is this person. So for our class photo, this is it's face identification, when we can identify the 1 to M, so identify multiple pictures, multiple faces on a picture. On the second topic, face verification, so two subsets, so face recognition, face verification and face identification. And for face verification, it's to check if people is granted, for example, to open his mobile phone or to access to a classroom. And we can add other algorithm to face verification with anti-spoofing, so to identify if it's a fake, a photo, or real people. So why face recognition? So we see it everywhere in social media, in photo management. So one of the first software tools was Picasa. So it was on computer using face recognition. Now it's deprecated. We have more online application using face recognition, but it's everywhere. Also a lot of use cases around retail security, all security for airports, for company security. So now we'll try to look more in detail how to do it, how to recognize faces on pictures. So all this technology is based on mathematics, and it's not a new topic. It's quite old. It has started in the 60s with one team of Woody Bledsoe, and this team has worked on two main topics: identifying dots on a face, and also they have seen that using a face that is not aligned will not allow to have a good accuracy for face recognition. When I look someone in the side, it's more difficult than having data normalization of a face for the algorithm. So after lots of teams have worked on the topic, and so it was more on using classic algorithm, but there is a big historical break for face recognition with a competition called ImageNet in 2012, where AlexNet, a team won this challenge. So it was based on convolutional neural network, and this algorithm was really a revolution and has increased a lot the accuracy of face recognition. And one of the first algorithm based on AlexNet is DeepNet, and DeepNet was the first face recognition algorithm. So if we take a picture, it's me again. So we have a full pipeline. So taking the picture, we will use a first algorithm using a model to isolate the face. After, we will identify facial features. So we said like a human identifying eyes, bone, nose, mouth. And this feature will be useful to align the face. So in this picture, I'm not exactly front of the camera. So applying just aligning the faces, I will be able to have, instead of like this, to be perfectly aligned. So we'll have a better accuracy with this normalization of the data. And the next step is to convert the face with a neural network to some measurement. So one of the main measurements is 128-dimensional unit hypersphere. So it's not simple wording. In fact, it will generate a signature. Every face will have a signature. And we'll compare this signature with other signatures we have already stored in a database, and we can check if it's a match. And to compare two faces, we'll use an algorithm, some mathematics, like 3D distance. It's called Euclidean distance. And if this distance for this framework is less than 0.6, it's a match, and it's not a match if it's more than 0.6. So an example, so there is a ton of examples. It's one example because there is like hundreds of different neural networks, but using this one with AlexNet, we first take a set of pictures, so lots of pictures of one people. We use a model a first face detector model to identify the face. After we align the face, we use another model. So in fact, it's multiple models to generate the signature. And we store this signature in a database. And we iterate this multiple times. And when we want to do the real face recognition, we will take a device in IoT, we call it endpoints, and we will go through the same pipeline, going through a network, isolating the face, generating the signature, and if the distance is less than 0.6, for this example, it's a match. It's quite simple. So it's simple, but here we have done a demonstration with some not full algorithm. It was with just Python and a quite simple library when there is not too much. Hold
on. Erwan, now that you've tried a little bit of brains, can you please maybe show us a demo?
Can try. So here, yeah, we are using this pipeline, so sending video frames. So I can see that it's Erwan, Sylvain, I can try.
And let me see. Oh.
Yeah, so it's okay,
nice.
Sylvain. We can also try with picture. So.
Okay, that's indeed me, yeah.
Yeah. Do we have someone else?
Oh.
Oops, no.
Oh yeah.
Who is it?
Is it?
Ah yeah, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's right. That's perfect then.
Okay, good.
Probably it's not that accurate, but I think for what we want,
no error.
It's a good start, yeah.
Yeah. Good. All right. So I spoke of DeepNet, but there is lots of frameworks. So also, if you want to work on this topic, it's good to know just the most common machine learning algorithm. So on also a few words. So all these algorithms are trained with data sets. So data set is a subset, we'll see a few examples. We'll use a machine algorithm with one or many neural network. We'll generate a model, and we'll use this model with some framework on the multiple libraries. So data scientists and researchers have done lots of progress because also there is lots of data sets available. So there is one data set, for example, coming from Flickr, from Creative Commons. So open source is not only good for the code, it's also good for research and for people to learn and use and produce better tools. So to create this algorithm, you need lots of images with multiple angles, with lighting, close. If you take a people with or without glasses, it's completely different. So getting all this information are important. And also, based on the region of the world, you will have to most of type of faces to be accurate. So just most common frameworks. So the idea is that face recognition is using object detection research. So I think this is very interesting. It's coming from a survey published this year, explaining that all the face recognition, face recognition framework are coming from object detection. So you have all seen the dogs and cats. So in fact, or identifying cars, identifying objects. So this algorithm, like AlexNet, in 2012, a team has created a dedicated network architecture for faces. Same for VGGNet, GoogleNet has created FaceNet, ResNet has been used with Face on SCNet, VDG Face2. So it's for this when you see an algorithm, if we speak of FaceNet, it will apply the common rules of GoogleNet. On each of its algorithms, based on the same data set, will produce a quality. So if at the beginning, one of the first machine learning algorithms. DeepFace had an accuracy of 97.35, and the last one, like ArcFace, has 99.83. So I think we said that machine will not be like human, but I'm pretty sure that they will be better than human because they are able to analyze more data. And also, starting from a picture, it's a lot of data. And if we take a simple iPhone with 12 million pixels, you will have 64 million information. So it's impossible to compute all this amount of data. And neural network are helping a lot to make to use a model and to generate more simple data that can be computed. And there is plenty of frameworks. So the most used framework is TensorFlow. So it's with a static graph on PyTorch, more dynamic, more used for research. So you will find most of the tooling and framework in this Linux Foundation website. They are analyzing which type of frameworks. So, because there is lots of data, we said that the neural network make it allow to compute less data, but it's still really heavy to compute. So, face recognition are using a lot of hardware acceleration to produce the model. So if we took the classic analytics pipeline, you have first the preparation of the data. So it's like collecting, grabbing all the picture. After, you will train your picture to produce a machine algorithm. So machine algorithm, we are not going in details, but it's giving weight between neurons. So it's based on mathematics. And when you have an accurate machine algorithm, you can produce a model, and you can use a model for inferencing. So there is two different steps producing a model. So you need lots of power, lots of parallelism. So it's mainly on data center or dedicated station. And for IoT or edge or regional data center, you can do inferencing. And if we take an example of inferencing, with the last Tesla V100, you can have 47 multiplied number. So it's inferencing. So recognizing picture with a network ResNet 50. So every time you see something about performance, you have to check which type of neural architecture used. So there is multiple type of hardware accelerators. We see in website lots of accelerators, but most of them are not usable for data center or for OpenStack. So there is devices that can be used for IoT, so the new Coral from Google, Jetson Nano from NVIDIA, or the neural compute stick. All of these accelerators, the neural compute or Coral, are only for inferencing. Or you can also work with pre-trained model. And for data center, OpenStack, we can use some FPGA GPU. The idea of this session is to speak more of GPUs. On GPU for data center, there is two main family of cards. So a card, the Nesla T4, which is based on Turing architecture, that can be used for training, but it's more used for inferencing. So you don't need the extra power. It's very simple to use. The main use card for data center is a Tesla V100 based on Volta, so it's really powerful for training. But yeah, if you want to use this card, take care because you cannot plug it in any existing server. You need some special fans, special power supply, so it's not a simple card to put on a server. It's better if you want to put it in your data center to check an OEM server like Dell. They will provide all the customization of the server because you cannot use it directly. So just a quick recap for these accelerators. So you can use CPU, and there is also powerful CPU for inferencing. For Edge, the Skylake D family, and also ARM more for IoT. For GPU, NVIDIA, there is also 2 other models, RTX 6000, RTX 8000, and FPGA for data center with Stratic X, Aria 10, and Mustang cards. So next.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so now you've seen there are some hardware, and I think it's pretty important for you to know exactly how to manage this hardware. So, oops, wait. So I can't switch. I don't get it. Anyway, don't worry. I will use it the old way. So first, worth saying why using OpenStack for it? First, because that's huge. That's specialized hardware, and sometimes it's very difficult to manage those. And what's good with OpenStack is that we actually provide an abstraction API, an abstraction layer, if you prefer, for managing your hardware. You don't really have to care as a user about which specific hardware you're going to use. What you want to use is a specific GPU, and that's basically it. The second point also, as an operator, is good for you because you can manage, through role-based access control, access to your GPUs just by using OpenStack. You can also have tenant isolation if you prefer, given data can be very sensitive. For example, think about the inference. It can be very touchy, and for example, you want to make sure that the workloads have to be separated. Then using tenant isolation is definitely a need. And the last point, of course, again for operators, is very useful because you can see it as capacity planning if you prefer. That's easy, given for users that's just GPUs. What's important for you is to make sure that you have enough resources for serving those specific asks about the GPU resources. So now that I've said that, there are actually 2 different ways of managing GPUs with OpenStack. The first one, which is called GPU pass-through, is pretty old actually in OpenStack. You can take, I guess, most of you, like 99% of you guys run a recent enough OpenStack version because that's in OpenStack. That's in Havana, sorry. That's from Havana. So the idea for that, as you can see, is that you have a direct relationship, you have a direct mapping in between the GPU and the guest and the application. So that's very interesting because then you get actually full support. You directly pass the GPU to the guest. But there are some drawbacks. The first drawback, of course, is that given you pass the whole GPU to the guest, if you want to, as an operator, just monitor the guest, just monitor the GPU, sorry, then you won't be able, because basically here, there is no way to actually introspect the GPU because all the API was passed directly to the guest. That's the first point. The second point, of course, is that given you're basically giving all the GPU to the user, there could be some security concerns. Like, for example, say, there could be some possibilities for the user to be able to flash a new firmware for your GPU because basically you don't have any limitation. So in general, when you want to use GPU pass-through for it, you have to make some extra security layers just to make sure that it won't happen. Given that, given the limitations I mentioned, starting recently, there is a new way for providing GPU resources to the users, which is called GPU virtualization. The main difference with previously is that you basically have what we call a vendor driver, which is located on the host. So this is very vendor specific. But given the kernel is now supporting through a specific API, you could probably have multiple vendors supporting it. The idea is that this is a manageable API where you can actually ask for creating a new resource, which will be a virtual GPU, or you could actually remove the allocation to that specific resource. Starting from now, as you can understand, this is very vendor specific. So for the needs of that specific explanation, I will stick with one specific vendor driver, which is basically NVIDIA, because NVIDIA at the moment, as of now, is the only hardware vendor that provides me this specific API. So for virtual GPUs, what it's more important for you is to know about the GPU profiles, because when you want to allocate some GPU resource to your guest, it's more important to know about your use cases. We told about inference or training. The needs are very different in between max throughput or large computation. So in general, what you have to say for each specific physical GPU, which exact GPU profile or type, if you prefer, you're going to use for that specific GPU. Like, for example, for the same card, here are just a few extracts because there are more GPU types for that specific card than this is, but here this is taken from the NVIDIA documentation. A specific card is providing a number of GPU types. For example, those for ones. And each of those profiles gives you an amount of virtual GPUs that you can allocate. So of course, depending on your needs, you could be interested in either choosing this specific profile because then you will be able to spawn the max number of guests, or you could probably use this one because then you will get the maximum performance dedicated to your guest. So in order to make that possible, there was a recent change in the kernel. So you basically need to have a 4.10 kernel in order to make that possible. But with the new Linux kernel, there is a new abstractional layer, which is basically made on sysfs, that gives you the interface where basically the vendor driver, here in that case NVIDIA, is just providing you specific information that you can actually query or create. I assume this is very theoretical, so for that specific reason, we'll basically show you more in detail. Can you please just go to the...
Yeah. So here we have a Red Hat OpenStack Platform 14. So in Red Hat OpenStack Platform 14, we had already this feature of vGPU, but it was called Tech Preview. So it was available for testing. So here we have multiple instances, and one instance is with vGPU. So we can connect on it. Check. All right. So I can check. We have a driver installed on it. So here I can see Sylvain spoke of a specific profile. So I spoke also of a V100, Tesla V100. This is a more old one called M10. And we can see that the M10 it's a physical GPU of 8 gig, but on this VM, I have 4 gig of frame buffer memory. So and if I go on the compute node, I can also check. I will find this card has 4 physical GPU, and the driver will show me this vGPU available. So for lots of Red Hat customers, it's very important to use this feature because Sylvain said that for security reasons, you have no way of monitoring who is using your pass-through. So with this virtual driver, you can check what are the users, which type of resources used. It's really easy to plug monitoring on this type of feature.
And very briefly, because you could be interested in exactly knowing how it works, basically what does the NVIDIA driver on the host, here I'm on the host, is basically just providing you a sysfs interface that you can actually look at. That's basically what Nova does. Where you can actually see those 4 physical GPUs seen as PCI devices. So say if I'm gonna use the first one, sorry, I'm not yeah. Then I'm getting a lot of information, and in particular I can query a specific information which will be the MDev supported types. where I can see for that physical GPU the list of types or profile it can use. Please keep in mind that the names that you can see there are not exactly the same one that we showed. That's normal because that's just a mapping in between I would say the profile name and what you get on sysfs. This is not exactly the string that I just mentioned. But say for NVIDIA 35, then I have a few information, and for example, I can see this specific information which is available instance and which actually gives me a critical information which is the number of virtual GPUs that I can actually allocate for that specific host. And of course, one last information which could be the description. Yep, this one, where you can actually see, for example, the max resolution and the max instances. Okay, so back to our slides. Whoops, thanks. Just keep in mind that given this is pretty recent, the NVIDIA driver has some limitations. So here I didn't want it to jump into describing all the limitations, but I recommend you to just look at those. Keep in mind that if you really want to use some workloads, if you want to create some workloads that will require those specific features, then it's not possible at the moment because of the NVIDIA driver to use virtual GPUs for that. So in that specific case, I would recommend you just to use GPU pass-through. So in order to make that possible, it's pretty easy. So here is an excerpt of what you have to do using Red Hat OpenStack platform configuration. So that's very simple. You have day one operation and you have day two operation. Day one operation is how to have compute nodes supporting the virtual GPUs. So for that, you have to specify for that specific compute node which specific GPU profile you want to apply for all the physical GPUs. That's, for the moment, a limitation that we have in Nova, and we aim to fix it very, very quickly. At the moment, you can only specify one GPU profile for the whole compute node, even if you have multiple GPU cards. So basically, you say, okay, I want to use this specific profile. What you have to also do is to create a specific image for what we call the overcloud, which is basically the compute nodes. And then by creating this image, you just have to make sure that you ship basically the NVIDIA driver for the host. And then you deploy, and then the compute node will actually provide you the information that I just showed you. That's day one. Day two is how to enable the feature to users, is how to enable the feature to your users. For that, again, it's very simple. What you have to make sure is to create an image where you have the NVIDIA drivers on the guest. That's the first step to do. And the second step is to create a specific flavor or multiple specific flavors depending on what you want, where you are actually providing a crucial information, basically a new extra spec saying, okay, I just want to use one single virtual GPU for this specific instance, and then it will actually allocate. OpenStack Nova will actually allocate for you the specific virtual GPU. Worth saying as well, the NVIDIA driver comes with a license. So just check out the specific terms of the license and how to use those and how to use virtual GPUs with that license. It requires a guide license in general. That's it for that. So back to Erwan.
Yeah, so just to check, so I said TensorFlow is one of the most used machine learning framework. So we just make a quick test on an instance. So running, so we take a virtual instance with two GPU attached, and we run TensorFlow, so the TensorFlow 1.13 using the ResNet. I spoke of different types of network architecture, so we'll run ResNet. So it's a benchmarking tooling to check the difference between running it with CPU and running it with GPU. So perhaps I will just be able to run it for GPU because it's so slow that I cannot run it for CPU, but I have the output. I'm on the instance, so I will launch the test. So here, it's I'm using so most of the use cases. You need to deploy Python. You need also to deploy CUDA, but you have plenty of tools to deploy. So there is an initiative from NVIDIA who is providing a marketplace called NGC. So here I am using an NGC container of TensorFlow coming from the marketplace of NVIDIA. On this, in fact, you have only to do a Docker run using this container, and you have everything inside, TensorFlow, CUDA, Python, everything, and also the NVIDIA integration with Docker. And also, we have worked a lot with Device plugin to integrate in OpenShift on Kubernetes to have integration between containers on the Docker, on the CRI-O. So here I'm running full training, and I can get with AlexNet 158 images per second. So we can try the same with CPU. We'll have to speak a lot because I think it.
Yeah, or maybe you can take Q&A after the meeting while it's computing.
Oh, yeah, we can do it. Yeah.
I mean, you will actually see there is a huge difference in between a CPU and a GPU for training, but yeah.
So, we didn't see, but when we launch this job, we are able to check with the NVIDIA command to see that the GPU is used. So now I run the CPU and we let it turning to check if we can do it better than 150. And just to finish, so using accelerators with OpenStack, so we have described the basics, but to use it, you also need to build architecture on top of OpenStack. OpenStack and Red Hat OpenStack platform are really powerful to deploy advanced infrastructure. When you are doing Hadoop, you need some storage, you need some master node, same for Spark. So using OpenStack, you can use template, and it's really easy to mix. For example, we have some customer in Red Hat who are using bare metal provisioning to run some use cases like Hadoop, and they are mixing with tenant and VMs. So with OpenStack, you can mix bare metal, VM, and all the flexibility of OpenStack. So just 3 references because I have used them their code. So with dlib, which is a C++ library, Adam Geige for phase recognition of Python, and Adrian Rosebrook, who is publishing a lot of content around phase recognition. So just one word, let's play AI and machine learning with OpenStack. So it's still computing, so now we can take questions, and I think we have like
we have like 3 minutes if you have any questions.
Yeah.
So does each PGPU on the card have to be configured for the same mode?
So the question is that whether each physical GPU has to be set for every mode. So just to make it clear, I'm mentioning the GPU profiles, right? So at the moment, Nova has the limitation to only have one specific GPU profile for being applied to all the physical GPUs. But you know that in Stein, we just basically reshaped a few things in terms of how we manage the capacity. So hopefully in the next cycles, it will be possible to just have a specific GPU profile per physical GPU. But that's still work to do.
Yeah, we start to have the first results of our CPU running. So with GPU, we were running 158 images per second for training with TensorFlow 1.13. And with CPU, it's only 3.3 per second. So you see there is a huge difference between running a CPU and GPU.
Someone had a question as well.
Yeah, what is the status of the vGPU feature for NVIDIA? Because last time I experimented with it, it was not available public for KVM. And I reached it to the NVIDIA, actually, and they say that it's still in the tech preview with the Red Hat only.
So that's actually a fairly good question, thanks. So are you speaking about OpenStack or just speaking about the KVM enablement for that specific
About the vGPU feature, NVIDIA agreed.
Yeah, okay. So is it tech preview?
It's still tech preview.
Yeah, I think it's still tech preview for, yeah. But yeah, so basically, you know, it's, the idea is that things still have to be continued to work on because this is fairly new. I mean, just to make it clear, virtual GPUs, I mean, the kernel supporting it is like 1 year. That's only since maybe 1 year, 1 year and a half. I don't exactly remember. So there are a few features that we still need to make, like for example, say, live migration is still a huge thing to be done. So indeed, there are a few caveats at the moment. The point of that specific feature is to make it available for very specific workloads, where, for example, you are not impacted with those limitations, but you can actually already use it, because then you are actually getting this flexibility for free. So that really depends on your use cases. I'm not saying that everything should be moved to virtual GPU, because things still have to be done with physical pass-through. But I mean, it's worth testing both, and depending on your use cases and other stuff. One maybe another point too.
Yeah, and do you have any forecast when it's going to be public so everyone can try it, virtual GPU?
Actually, you can. I mean, just to make it clear, I don't know what you mean by public, but it's already available. You can actually take, for example, a 30 days evaluation driver that you can actually play on the host, that you can actually install on the host, that will give you that specific feature. So and then you will have to acquire a license for using it for more than a test case.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Another question, yeah?
Yeah.
Perhaps if you can use a mic for the recording.
Or maybe you can speak.
Yeah.
We can speak.
Try speaking louder. What you mentioned, virtual GPU does not, or is not supported in RDMA. Did you try it, or was there a technical issue?
RDMA, you mean? So the question is why vGPU is not supported by RDMA?
It's documented by NVIDIA. Mainly the issues are coming from the CUDA layer. For example, development tooling, they have not recoded everything. So it's using physical addresses and not virtual addresses inside the driver. So most of the use cases, there is some use cases about NVLink, for example. Here it's because it's sharing memory. So this use case is specific of sharing memory between GPUs. And for most of the other limitation, it's because NVIDIA has not yet recoded and it's still using a physical address and not virtual addresses.
And I think we're over time.
One thing real quick, vGPU is tech preview and OpenStack, Red Hat OpenStack 14.
14,
yeah.
On the, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.